find the gambler who murdered their pa. 5 brothers and 3 in their teens. Gotta find the man who shot their pa in New Orleans. New Orleans. Heard of him in Houston, and the trail was leading west. They left there many months ago, and so they could not rest. 5 brothers and 3 in their teens. Gotta find the man who shot their pa in New Orleans. New Orleans. Trail led to the Badlands, and the desert promised death. Gamblers' odds were different now. He cherished every breath. 5 brothers and 3 in their teens. Gotta find the man who shot their pa in New Orleans. Saw the killer, he was by a water hole. 5 rifles rang out in the night, they killed the gambler cold. 5 brothers and 3 in their teens finally shot the man who killed their pa in New Orleans. New Orleans. Desert is their keeper now, for this a traveler said. Poison live within the well, now 6 of them are dead. 5 brothers and 3 in their teens lay beside the man who shot their pa in New Orleans. Lay beside the man who shot their pa in New
How high is the sky?
The harmonizing minor refrain. No name blues. I say, what do they do? Oh, Lordy me, well, I'm telling you, they don't need no band. They keep time, just clapping their hands. About as happy as a cow, chewing on his cud, when the people beat their feet on that Mississippi mud.
Welcome to our 9th annual Bourbon Browns. We're live on site in Frankfort, Kentucky at Liberty Hall in the Orlando Brown House in our garden on our 4-acre site on the Kentucky River. I'd like to thank Tom and Betsy Bulleit, our honorary chairs, for hosting our event. They will take us on an adventure that will be so much fun tonight and show you the makings of bourbon, some of the history, and we can't thank them enough for creating this event for us. You'll see while we're raising funds as you look around the property. Our society is all over the United States of America, and we are in the business of preserving properties. We have over 90 historic properties around the country, and educating from these properties about the lives of people who lived during those times. You can see we have 2 houses, which is unusual. We have Liberty Hall, which was built by John and Margaretta Brown, and the house next door, which John Brown built for his son Orlando. We're very excited to have 2 new roofs, a copper roof on the Orlando Brown house and a shake roof on Liberty Hall. We believe both are original materials that were used during the time. The Orlando Brown house is attributed to a well-known architect, Gideon Schrock, and Liberty Hall was said to have had input from Thomas Jefferson. He wanted Liberty Hall to be 1 story, as Monticello is, but 2 stories were already in the works, so it was too late for that. You can see as you look around the property what your generosity has enabled us to do. I'm so grateful to you. You can see we are able to replace our porch, which was very dangerous, enabled us to keep water intrusion from the houses with our new roofs. And when you look around the grounds, you can see the beauty that you've created. And we'd like to invite you to come see firsthand what your generosity has allowed us to maintain. So you won't be disappointed. Now, sit back, relax. Cheers to Tom and Betsy. Cheers to John and Margaretta, and cheers to each one of you. And a special heartfelt thanks to our sponsors, to our staff, who couldn't have done a better job during COVID of keeping us ticking along, to our membership, to my board, to all of our friends in the community and beyond. Many, many, many thanks.
Janie, thank you so much for that warm welcome. Everybody, welcome to the 2021 Bourbon and Browns event here at the Bulleit Distilling Company in Shelbyville, Kentucky. We're gonna have a great night with you. We're gonna give you a little insight into what we do here at Bulleit. We're gonna make some cocktails. We're gonna taste some whiskey. We're gonna have a great time. First and foremost, we wanna go over some housekeeping rules. Everybody has received a kit in the mail. Go ahead and open that kit up. Make sure you have all of your components for the cocktails laid out. We're gonna get you a cocktail in your hand pretty quickly. The one thing that we couldn't ship in the kit was the ice. So go ahead, take this opportunity, get some ice for the cocktails that we're gonna make in a little bit so that you're ready to go. And with that being said, let's get started. I am here with Melissa Rift. Melissa, you are a single barrel ambassador for Bulleit. Sounds like a fancy title. What do you do here?
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for having me. My name's Melissa Rift. Like Tom said, I run the single barrel program here at Bulleit Distilling Company. And what that entails is hosting folks who own liquor stores, bars, restaurants, or even sometimes private buyers who want to invest in buying a whole barrel of Bulleit bourbon. They come to visit the distillery, we do a private tour, we sit down, have a tasting, and we pick a barrel. And that barrel is uniquely theirs. It goes into bottles. They get to put some custom labeling on it and send it out into the world.
Sounds like a very cool experience that you're able to give people on a daily basis. Now, we're in this beautiful facility here. It's our visitor center here at Bulleit. Obviously, we hope that you guys have an opportunity, if you haven't already, to come visit us. This truly is a unique place. So kind of give me a little insight into what do you guys do here on a daily basis?
Sure. So we opened this facility summer of 2019. It was a 17th stop added to the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. So really excited to be among lots of other fun experiences here in Kentucky, talking about bourbon and history and heritage. Bulleit has always been really future focused. You know, we call ourselves a frontier whiskey, and the reason for that is paying homage to the tradition that came before us, but really driving towards the future and kind of starting new conversations in the industry. So one of the things we wanted to do with the opening of this place is focus on modern technology. We built a brand new distillery. We didn't retrofit into an older facility. So we're talking about all the modern technology that we use to build something state of the art. We talk a lot about sustainability. Sustainability is really the core of our ethos here. We want to make sure that we can continue to keep talking about bourbon well into the future and also use our sustainable resources in a really kind of mindful way. And then the last thing that we talk about are collaborations. Bulleit's always been a very collaborative brand. We do lots of art collaborations, like the tattoo wall we have behind us.
Super cool, right?
Beautiful piece.
Yeah.
And we also collaborate a lot with our friends in the service industry. So Bulleit was tapped into the bartending industry, really well suited for craft cocktails very early on in our history. And so we feature a lot of that as far as what we do here as well.
Yeah, and I think that for me, and you've pointed out really a couple important factors. One, sustainability, right? So here on site, I know there's an herb garden out back where we're actually growing our own garnishes, not only things that you'll find native here to Kentucky, but also things that go really well in some cool and unique cocktails at our bar that's in the back, which we will be going to in just a couple minutes to make a cocktail. But what are some other things from a technology perspective? You know, I know that not only do we rely on technology to help us make the whiskey, but we also use technology to tell the story here, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to implement at this visitor center is an experience that you're not going to find anywhere else. We really wanted to put our own modern spin on taking a bourbon tour, doing a bourbon tasting. So we're actually going to highlight this a bit later in your visit, but we have a multi-sensory tasting experience here in our visitor center where we actually use sound, we use lights, we use aromas, as well as the taste of the whiskey. It really helps you kind of dive into each of our products and find different layers in it that you might not experience just sipping it at home or at a bar.
Right, and that's something that's not only truly unique just for this property, but across the Bourbon Trail, we're not seeing, at least I don't know of any other distilleries that are offering kind of that four-dimensional, you know, tasting experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of folks who come in and say, you know, we've been on lots of tours and tastings here. This was different than anything else we've done. And my favorite thing is it's experiences people can actually take home with them and share with their friends and family.
Yeah, exactly. And so not only when you get to come here do you get to learn a little bit about the whiskey industry, how we make whiskey. We'll kind of take you on a tour of the distillery in a little bit and show you exactly how we do it and how we implement some of the technologies that we're talking about. But we also hope that you kind of go home and take those things with you so that you can share them with other people at home, because obviously what we do, we love it, we live it, it's a passion for us. We want everybody else to feel that same passion. Take the things that you learned today and go home with them and share those things with your family and friends, because I think that's super important, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite things about working on the Bourbon Trail is hosting people who've never had Bulleit before, people who Bulleit's their favorite whiskey on the menu, and people who want to take this experience back home and kind of teach people what they learned while they're here.
Yeah, and so I think from our standpoint, we're also really engaging the trade a lot too, right? So we do a lot of collaborations with bartenders and whatnot to, they obviously help support the brand very much by helping the business grow by what they do. But what are some of the cool things that we're doing with mixologists around the country?
Yeah, so our collaborations with bartenders are really special to us because, you know, back when our brand launched, we launched in 1987, bourbon was not very popular back then. Clear spirits had kind of been on the rise for many years. And when Bulleit really started gaining notoriety, it was because bartenders loved the flavor of our product, kind of the ethos of our product, and the fact that we asked them what they could use in a good high rye Kentucky bourbon.
Right.
And so we've just continued those collaborations throughout time. All over the country, big major metropolitan cities really have big Bulleit presence because of the, you know, the energy we put into our friends behind the bar and what they give back to us.
Yeah, and I think like this is a great segue, right? I know you guys are probably thirsty. We want to get a cocktail in your hand. We're going to talk about the history and heritage of Bulleit in a little bit. We're going to take you on a tour of the distillery, and we're also going to show you that tasting experience that Melissa talked about. But I think right now is a great time. I'm going to head to the cocktail bar. We're going to talk to Brian Downing, our mixologist, and we're going to make your first cocktail. All right, everybody, we're here at the Bulleit Distilling Company bar. I've got our mixologist, Brian Downing, with us today.
Tom, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We got our good friends with the Bourbon Browns here event. We're going to take them through a classic cocktail called the Brown Derby. Now, I know there's a little bit of historical significance behind this cocktail, correct?
Sure. Yeah, so this cocktail debuts in Hollywood in 1930. Now,
Okay.
this is the signature cocktail of the Vendome Club on Sunset Boulevard. 1930, of course, you'll know is in the heart of Prohibition,
Right.
right? So this is a speakeasy cocktail, and with that in mind, very simple to make, really easy to drink,
Okay.
very refreshing. The trick is you could never get caught with a cocktail, right? So you want things that are nice and easy to tip back.
Sure.
This certainly fits the bill. So this is a marriage of 3 simple ingredients: Bulleit bourbon, of course, fresh grapefruit juice, and honey.
Okay.
And that honey really balances the sweetness, kind of provides a contrast to tie the whiskey and the grapefruit juice together. The acidity there in the grapefruit kind of keeps the whiskey from being too over the top. And of course, Bulleit, the high-rye spice note, is going to drive this whole cocktail together.
Sure. Now, our good friends did receive a package in the mail that includes all of the ingredients that they need to make these cocktails. You want to run everybody through the cocktails that were in the kit?
Sure.
Excuse me, the ingredients that were in the kit.
So we have our grapefruit juice. This little honey packet is going to be good for 2 cocktails. So we're only going to use half of it in each cocktail. And then we have our dehydrated oranges, which are going to be our garnish. Of course, star of the show is going to be your personalized bottle of Bulleit bourbon. We've got our Bourbon Browns label there. And if you're all set.
Yeah, and they also got a cocktail shaker in the kit
Sure.
as well. And so I think one of the things that we do want to talk about, Ryan, is, you know, there are differences between shaken cocktails and stirred cocktails, correct?
Absolutely. So we shake cocktails that have juice.
Okay.
Or that we think need to change some texture. So for this cocktail, because we're not only using fresh grapefruit juice, but we're also using honey, we want to make sure that both of those ingredients come together fully. We also want to add a little air into this cocktail, which is what shaking is really going to do. And we think of a stirred cocktail, like a martini, like a Manhattan.
Sure.
You don't have anything that isn't liquor or liqueurs, right?
Right, sure.
So there's no juice, and thus you want to stir for dilution, but you're not really, you don't have the need to shake the same thing.
Right,
Same way.
gotcha. Okay, well, listen, I think we should get into making one of these cocktails.
Sure. So the first.
And you guys follow along with us, right? So, again, the only thing that we couldn't send you was the ice, so go ahead and prepare your ice now into the glasses that were provided, and also the shaker that was provided.
So I've already got my ice here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with 1.5 ounces of Bulleit bourbon. Now I've got all these measurements pretty much metered out because I'm a trained professional. So 1.5 ounces of Bulleit bourbon there. We're going to add 3 ounces of our grapefruit juice. And now half this packet of honey. And again, this will be good for 2 cocktails. This is acacia honey, so it's got a really nice floral note. I'll squeeze that in there. And this gives us, again, the sweetness that kind of ties everything together. Honey does a really great job in cocktails, both tying texture and flavor together while still providing sweetness. And now we're going to cap this up. Now this is a 3-part shaker. Make sure all 3 parts are together. And Tom, I promise I'm not going to throw this at you.
Please don't.
As a general rule, when you're shaking a cocktail, face away from somebody, right?
Thank you.
The other thing you want to keep in mind, shake harder and faster than you think you need to.
Right.
So here we go. You see that nice kind of frosty edge to this?
Sure.
That lets us know our temperature is right. Our level of dilution should be about right. Take that cap off. And pour that
Strain it
cocktail.
right into the glass. But I can really see what you're talking about when you're talking about the texture changing, right? We have a nice froth to it. So we're really kind of putting a ton of air into this cocktail by shaking it.
That's really it. When we talk about inflating a cocktail, when you're shaking a cocktail hard enough, that air becomes a secret ingredient. The other thing we're going to add, of course, is our dehydrated orange, which as that cocktail kind of softens that up, and it gets some nice citrus notes there as well.
Is this for me?
Cheers, sir.
Wow. Well, thank you. Cheers, everyone. Brian, thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure. I hope you enjoy the Brown Derby. Again, this is a delightful cocktail.
Wow.
It's great to both start your evening and, of course, start your day if you happen to be enjoying a cocktail
Well,
at
yeah,
brunch.
and I love this. It's a nice light cocktail. I love the citrus notes on top of it with the grapefruit. You know, the dehydrated orange is only going to liven the cocktail over time. I really think this would tend well in the morning, you know, like at a brunch or something. I mean, Derby's coming up. Maybe you have one of these while you're picking the winners.
You know, I pick winners all day. I don't know about you.
Well, I only pick winners in the morning before Derby.
Fair enough.
That's just me. All right, so we've got a cocktail in your hand. We want to go back to Melissa. I'm going to join her in the Pioneer Gallery where we're going to showcase some of the people that was very important about building this brand.
All right, Tom, we're here in the Pioneer Gallery. This is where we start our tours and we get to kind of put the brand into some context, talk about some folks who've really helped us launch the brand, achieve success over the years, before we head out on our tour to talk about how we make all of our products.
Awesome. So here we're really learning about the people that have helped launch this brand and made it what it is today. And, you know, I think we start with the First Lady of Bulleit, Mrs. Betsy Bulleit.
Absolutely. Now, Betsy has an interesting story. We have this whole, you know, frontier, pioneer theme to our brand. Again, paying homage to the people that came before us, but really kind of looking towards the future. And Betsy has her own pioneering story. She's actually one of the first female stockbrokers in the state of Kentucky. So
Wow.
Applaud her for being a pioneer in her own right.
Yeah, for sure. And most importantly, I think she was the one who did not tell Tom no when he wanted to do this whole thing, right?
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, major kudos to her.
Yeah.
As we head down the hallway, we move to another prominent person, Mr. Steve Sandstrom. We call Steve our pioneer of package and design.
Now, and help me understand, because I believe this was the original bottle here that Mr. Bulleit came up with, and then as the popularity grew, I kind of think they felt like they needed to have some new packaging to stand out in the stores, and Mr. Sandstrom here was the one who created this award-winning bottle, right?
Absolutely, and Steve, I have to give him also just major kudos because he just has such a good eye for encapsulating what I like to think of as the spirit of the brand. You know, we've got bright pop of color on the label. One of the things I love about Bulleit is it just feels like a brand with so much energy and fun behind it, and I love that about the labeling. The embossed glass was really kind of unseen at the time. This was in the late 90s when Steve designed this, and it really pushed the labeling to the bottom of the bottle, and it made the liquid the prominent kind of feature here, which for an aged spirit like bourbon is just fantastic. You get to see that really nice dark caramel color.
Yeah, and I think also when we talk about just the frontier and the pioneers of who built this brand, the bottle itself looks like it's like the old pre-prohibition medicinal style bottles. So I think it's super cool. The bottle tells a story, the liquid tells a story, and I think this guy nailed it.
Absolutely. Next on the gallery, we actually have another Steve. This is Steve Beale, and we call him our pioneer of market expansion.
Okay.
So Steve Beale comes from San Francisco, California, out on the West Coast. I know I already mentioned how important the service industry, bartending industry has been to us.
Right.
This is the guy who really tapped us into that market.
And I think the whole craft cocktail movement, or rebirth of it, right, was really kind of started in the Bay Area where Steve is, and I think he was instrumental in helping, Bulleit be a part of that movement, which helped us gain national notoriety, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Bulleit, and we'll talk about this when we kind of head to the distillery, is what we call a high rye bourbon. So high rye means that we're going to have a really spicy flavor profile. Now at the time, this was, late 90s, early 2000s. First of all, bourbon was not the most popular spirit in the States, if you can believe that. And also, really spice-forward bourbons were probably not the most popular. Things that were sweeter, more mellow. But Steve really saw our potential in the high rye, and he knew a high rye bourbon's going to sit really well in a craft cocktail because of the other bold flavors in there.
Right.
And so he just had the foresight to say, hey, I think that Bulleit is going to plug into this market really well. He saw the craft cocktail movement that was sparking in the West Coast. And then after Tom went out and visited him on the West Coast, Bulleit just became kind of a prominent craft cocktailing product.
Amazing. And I think that's, as we talked about the importance of the mixologist and, their job, this brand I think was really built from behind the bar outward. And so really pay homage and thanks to Steve, because he was a very prominent figure in doing that. So,
absolutely. Wouldn't be here today if it not for him.
Right, exactly.
And next we're going to talk about Lisa Schulte. We call her our pioneer of arts and culture, but back home in Los Angeles, she's known as the Neon Queen.
Right, so as we talked about earlier about how Bulleit really kind of partners with kind of pioneers in their own respective fields, from a cultural perspective, Lisa helped us not only build one of our really cool art installations, but she's well known in her own right. A lot of her neons have been featured in major movies, right? Yeah,
she's really a wealth of talent as far as neon art goes, which is kind of, a rare art form. Lisa really is the cream of the crop. And so we actually launched our first project with her in 2017. We called it Bulleit Frontier Works because the whole idea behind the project is we want to find, you're right, pioneers, innovators, collaborators, people who are doing cool things with new technology, rare art forms, and really kind of unite around the spirit of our brand, that frontier whiskey spirit, and kind of do something cool together. So she created a billboard out in LA. Other artists we worked with tattoo artists on a huge tattoo project. It was a collaborative leather-bound billboard.
Which we actually have in our atrium right over here, so when you guys come visit us, you'll be able to see it in person.
It's now, yes, found its home here in the visitor center, but that traveled all over the country for a couple of years. So these projects, they've really allowed us to step outside of just being a spirits brand and really kind of tap into something unique.
Yeah, and the project that she's talking about, this neon billboard in LA, is in Grand Central Market. And if anybody's on the West Coast and you're in LA, I encourage you to go look at it. It is one of the coolest projects I've had the pleasure of working on. It is really, really neat.
It's incredible. That tattoo wall also kind of evolved into something as well, which was a limited edition run of bottles that we did. It's the only time we've actually ever altered that Steve Sandstrom design of our bottle, and we printed 4 tattoo designs on the back of the Bulleit bottle. Sold those all over the country. There was a design featuring Austin, featuring Portland, Oregon, featuring New York City, and featuring Los Angeles.
Yeah, super cool. And you could only get those in those certain areas around the world, so they've kind of become a little bit of a collector's item for sure.
It was awesome. Yeah, and we're always looking for the next collaboration we're going to be doing. Do you know of any others that we've done over the years?
Well, we have done some, obviously, with clothing lines. So we have good partners, Noble Denim. I believe they're in Cincinnati. They've actually taken some denim and aged them in whiskey barrels, which I didn't even know you could age denim, but apparently you can, and they've done that. So that's super cool. And then I think we've also done some really neat work with 3D printing. So we actually built a 3D printed bar, again, on a massive scale. It was about 30 feet long, 18 feet high. Just phenomenal to work on these cool projects. And Bulleit is great for giving us these platforms and working in these different industries and collaborating with different pioneers in their own right. So it's great.
Yeah, Bulleit Frontier Works, always featured on our social media. You can catch it out in the world. It's kind of a fun thing to just happen upon. But yeah, started with that project with Lisa Schulte. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about, of course, our founder, Mr. Tom Bulleit.
So he's the original pioneer, correct?
He's the original pioneer, and back in 1987, Tom had a dream to take an old family recipe, that high rye recipe for the bourbon we talked about,
Right.
Wanted to kind of resurrect it, turn it into a brand. In the early days, really built it on a sip and a handshake and brought us to where we are today.
Yeah, and one of the things that I admire most about this guy is that he really, he was a lawyer by trade, right? So he had a passion for whiskey just like you and I do, and he really was able to take the passion that he had and turned it into, one of the top whiskey brands in the world today. So, kudos to Mr. Bulleit for allowing us to do what we get to do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. And now I think, we've put the brand into some context. We've told people where we come from, who we are, how we got here. Unfortunately, can't go over to the distillery today,
Right.
but we do have some footage of myself giving a tour. We want you guys to get a little glimpse into what you'll get when you come take a tour with us. But of course, always welcome to come out and see us when you're able. On our short drive to the distillery, I want to point out a few things about our facility. One of our core ethos at the Bulleit Distilling Company is sustainability. We're actually riding right now in one of our propane-powered buses, which is a great example of our commitment to reducing emissions and the effects of our carbon footprint. And if you look out the window, you can see our array of solar panels, the first in Shelby County, which subsidize our energy usage back to the county power grid. We have also set up a unique water stewardship system to ensure the distillery has a minimal impact on our local water source. Bulleit also recently began construction on a new distillery site in Lebanon, Kentucky, about an hour from here, and that's going to be Diageo's first carbon neutral site. That means we're going to be using 100% renewable energy. So our first stop on the tour, we're going to be talking about grains. And in order to make really good, high-quality bourbon, you have to have high-quality ingredients. And we just so happen to be situated perfectly here in Shelbyville, Kentucky, to be sourcing all of our corn from within a 30-mile radius of our distillery, which is really good community-focused agriculture, keeping with our sustainability message, and it gives us great, fresh, locally sourced corn. Now, by definition, corn does have to be at least 51% of your recipe to make bourbon, and our mash bill is going to be about 68% corn, 28% rye, giving us our nice high spice, and 4% malted barley. Now, a great way to create some variety and complexity to your flavor is to not just have one mash bill, we actually use two. Both are considered a high rye, and it's going to give us some nice balance in how much spice shines through, how much we can balance that with some fruit-forward flavors, and really give us a nice, well-rounded sip of bourbon every time you open a bottle of Bulleit. Now, once we get all of these grains from local farms, we're going to be milling them down in our hammer mill, and our hammer mill is going to turn it to a nice cornmeal type consistency, really increasing the surface area and making it easier for us to cook. Now, what we've been talking about so far is our recipe for Bulleit bourbon. Bulleit rye is actually going to be very different than that. We don't use any corn to make Bulleit rye. It's 95% rye, 5% malted barley, 0% corn, giving us even more spice coming from the rye, a little bit drier of a flavor profile, perfect to sit in a wonderful crafted Manhattan. Now that we've talked a little bit about our three grains that we're using, our corn, our rye, and our barley, the next element we're going to talk about is yeast, and we'll head down the hallway to take a look at our yeast library. So now that we've talked about our mash bill and the breakdown of our grains, how we're getting sweetness from corn and spiciness from rye, we're going to cook all of those grains down in the mashing process, which really just allows us to express all of the sugars so that we can feed those sugars to our yeast. Now, yeast is one of the most fascinating parts of the alcohol production process because yeast is going to be eating all of those sugars and in turn producing a byproduct that is a low-proof alcohol that we'll call a distiller's beer. Now again, if we used one mash bill and one yeast strain and tried to create the same flavor profile in every single barrel of whiskey, it'd be really difficult to achieve and rather non-complex. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to take a yeast library of 5 yeast strains in combination with our 2 mash bills to create 10 overall flavor profiles. That means 10 recipes for 10 unique distillates that are going to be combined together to create what you know as Bulleit bourbon. Now, as you can see, these yeast profiles range in flavor from earthier flavors like slight leather and leather banana to really fruit-forward flavors like strawberry and jackfruit to a little bit of buttery creaminess with that fruity creamy. All of those are going to be contributing to the flavor profile of Bulleit, and all of them are going to give us a lot of complexity. So the next part of the process is going to talk about how we ferment these into a distiller's beer and then eventually run them through our column still to create a high-proof alcohol. we'll go there now. So now that we've talked through every part of the process, starting with the grains, mashing them down, combining with our yeast library into fermentation, we're going to be fermenting all of those products into what we call a distiller's beer, which again is kind of a low-proof alcohol. And to become a whiskey, we have to distill it into a higher proof alcohol using our beautiful column still. Now, a column still is like a giant cylinder. Ours is 52 feet tall. And inside of it, we're going to be boiling the alcohol until it vaporizes, separating it from water and the rest of those spent grains, sending that alcohol vapor to the top of the still and the rest of that waste matter to the bottom. Now we're going to take all of that stillage and recycle it. We're going to be sending it back to local farmers to feed their livestock. And the alcohol vapor that's rising to the top is going to be sent to a doubler, which is a different piece of equipment where we do our second round of distillation. And that's really just going to be kind of a polishing run, really making sure we've got our flavor where we want it. And at the end of that doubling process, we get what we call a moonshine or a white dog whiskey. Now again, we've got our 10 different recipes, and we're going to be distilling all 10 of those recipes into a distillate separately, sending them to barrels and into our warehouses here on site to age. All right, so the last part of our process is going to be aging, and to do that, we're going to be using brand new charred oak barrels, which is a great opportunity to mention Bulleit's recent partnership with a company called American Forests. We've vowed to plant 1 million trees across the country with the aim of maintaining and restoring America's oak forests that contribute so wonderfully to the aging process for our product. Now, aging inside of the barrel is going to bring us a lot of flavor and 100% of our color, and a lot of that's going to be coming from the char you see inside the barrels. We use a level 4 char, which is the highest level char they have to offer in the industry, bringing a lot of vanilla and caramelization to the game. We're going to put our white dog inside of these barrels, set them in a non-temperature controlled aging warehouse, and let Mother Nature take its course. Here in Kentucky, we get really hot, humid summers, really cold, snowy winters, and those temperatures are going to be forcing expansion into the oak in the summertime and then contraction back into the middle of the barrel in the wintertime, over and over and over again for several years, giving us a lot of flavors like vanilla, caramel, tobacco, and fruit, balancing with that spiciness from our mash bill and that variety from our yeast strains. All 10 of these recipes aging in our warehouses here on site and eventually combining into a perfect sip of Bulleit bourbon.
Melissa, thank you so much for taking us on a tour of the distillery. I love seeing all of the technology that we're using today that goes into making the whiskey.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And actually, we have some exciting stuff on the horizon. Like I said, Bulleit, always really future-driven, future-focused. We built this fantastic distillery, broke ground in 2014, started production in 2016, and our demand has just continued to grow so exponentially over those years that we actually are not keeping up with that projected demand as much liquid as we're making here. So we're actually building a second, what we call supplemental distillation site down in Lebanon, Kentucky. It's going to be southwest of here, and it is going to be, again, state-of-the-art, upping the ante on sustainability. It's actually going to be carbon neutral in the first few years of production, and it's going to be an exciting new thing for Bulleit coming in the future.
Well, that's great, and again, well, number one, it's great that we're selling so much whiskey that we have to have another distillery to help us keep up with the demand.
Can't complain about that.
Right? Can't complain with that. But then certainly, I think, again, we're pushing these boundaries when it comes to technology. I know you were able to show off the solar array that we have, and a lot of the different technologies that we're using. I mean, one of the coolest things on the tour is when you get to see the operation room at the distillery. It looks like there's 4 people sitting inside the space shuttle just pushing buttons, which is amazing to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's what we like to call bourbon in the 21st century, and that's just more of what we'll see in Lebanon, and really excited just to see where it takes the brand after that.
So not only are we using technology in creating the liquid, but we're also using technology here. We're in one of the tasting rooms here at the Visitor Experience, right? And we're, as we talked about earlier, this is really a multi-sensory tasting. So kind of why don't you walk us through a little bit of what what our guests would see if they were here today with us?
Yeah, so if you were taking the tour with us here at Bulleit Distilling Company, you'd take that tour, we'd end up in the tasting room. Grand finale, after you learn about how all of our product is made, is actually getting to walk through each of our labels: Bulleit Bourbon, Bulleit Tenure, Bulleit Rye, and Bulleit Barrel Strength. using that unique multi-sensory tasting experience. We've got lights in the room here. They actually change color with each of the samples, kind of giving us the ambiance that we feel with each one.
Which is really hard to translate here on
It is.
camera live with you guys. So definitely when you come and visit us in person, you'll be able to experience this firsthand. And it's super cool.
It is. It really, it's hard to explain, but you're sitting in the room, the hue of the room changes, and it just shifts the way that you feel about each of the samples as we progress through them. Similarly, we have sound. We partnered with Sonos. We have surround sound systems in each of the rooms, and they're also going to queue up different sound effects that go with each of our samples as well. And they kind of pair with different seasons of the year, which I love because I'm very much a seasonal drinker. I enjoy different things in summertime than I do in wintertime. So you get like a nice kind of patio acoustic guitar feel with the Bulleit bourbon. The Bulleit 10 year is going to be some like rustling leaves, kind of giving you some fall vibes, block party in the spring, and a nice crackling of a fireplace for the barrel strength in the wintertime. So it really does, even without noticing, shifts your attitude towards each of these as you're sitting in the room.
Right, so not only are we tasting the liquid, right, and then you have one of our ambassadors here walking everybody through kind of what their experience on the palate, right, and the nose. Talk about these little sensory bulbs here that we have. You know, what are we trying to do when we talk about relationship of scent when it comes to whiskeys?
Yeah, so the lights and the sound are really, like I said, meant to create almost like a subconscious ambiance. This is a lot more intentional. So when you're tasting whiskey, a lot of the time we have you hold the whiskey up to your nose, get an aroma profile on it, and that's because your olfactory senses, the way that you smell, affects so much about how you taste. So what we've done is kind of taken that a step further, and we've curated aromas that go in these sensory bulbs, and they've got things like toasted oak, they've got chamomile in one of them, grapefruit, a little bit of citrus bringing in, and it kind of goes with each of the flavor profiles of each of our liquids.
Right.
And what it does is when you smell those smells, it shifts the way that your palate is experiencing the whiskey. I like to call it kind of a mini science experiment. And the cool thing is we've curated it for people here, but it's the same thing you can go home and do. You can pick some vanilla extract out of your pantry, hold it up by your nose, jump back to one of our bourbons, see if you notice more of the vanilla, see if it causes a contrast to some of that smell,
right,
and then sample the whiskey with it. And it really does just kind of help you access different layers in the product.
Yeah, and when we're actually going to go, when we make our second cocktail of the afternoon here in just a little bit, we're going to go walk you guys through kind of a tasting experience, how you should taste whiskey, right? So our mixologist, Brian, and I will kind of walk you guys through that. So when you come here, you truly are getting, you know, the essence of the brand with all of the cultural things that we're doing. You get to see the people who are super important, like Mr. and Mrs. Bulleit, you know, that built the brand, and then you're able to taste these fine whiskeys. I mean, it kind of makes me sad that I can't just go ahead and try these now, but we'll try some in just a little bit with this other cocktail that we're going to do. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for taking us on our journey today. We really appreciate it. I know that I'm sure that our guests are going to look forward to seeing you here in the future.
Thank you, Tom. My pleasure, and thank you, everybody, for having me.
All right, we're back here at the bar with Mr. Brian Downing.
Sir.
Brian, we've experienced one cocktail already. We're going to make another cocktail, the signature cocktail of Liberty Hall, which is why we're all here today for this Bourbon and Browns event. But I thought maybe we take a second and really kind of talk about, we've just finished in one of the tasting rooms where we talk about our multi-sensory tasting experience. You know, one of the things that I always find interesting when people come here is people don't know how to taste, right? So I think this would be a great opportunity because, you know, they have the bourbon in front of them. You know, we thought we'd kind of walk you all through what it means to taste whiskey and how to taste whiskey, so that, you know, that's something that they can carry forward with them. You know, you have guests over, you know, you can kind of teach that too. So Brian, why don't you kind of walk us through how to taste whiskey?
Sure. So first off, we're going to start off by pouring just a splash of Bulleit bourbon into our Glencairn tasting glasses.
Now, Brian, the Glencairn glass is a specific specialized glass used for tasting whiskey, correct?
Absolutely. This glass was designed with whiskey in mind.
Okay.
And basically the shape of this glass allows kind of the high water mark, this little bubble there, allows that whiskey to expand and be in contact with the air. The narrow neck, this kind of tulip shape of the glass, focuses the aromatics.
Okay.
So the first thing we're going to do with this glass is hold it up and look through it. Right? This gives us a chance to look at the color of the whiskey. You know why I do this, Tom?
Why?
This also makes it look like you know exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
Right?
I often feel the same way.
So you take that look, kind of basically the way the whiskey behaves in the glass, the way it moves in the glass.
Sure.
You should expect it to kind of behave the same way on the palate.
Okay.
So here we should see pretty small drops that form pretty quickly and start to fall. It tells us this whiskey's going to be with us for a little bit. The color, you get this bright amber color.
Now, in lieu of not being here and going through the tasting experience, what's our age statement or the age of the whiskeys that are in the bottle here?
So on average, we're between about 6 and 8 years old.
Okay.
So, there's no minimum age statement in this whiskey, right? Legally, you have to be at least 4. Anything beyond that is fair game.
Okay.
Here, we're between about 6 and 8 because we want a lot of that big high-rise spice note to come through.
Sure.
We also want to see some of the big, soft vanilla notes develop as well, and those do take time. We can't rush that.
Right.
So to detect that, next thing we're going to do is actually smell this whiskey.
Okay.
So waft this under your nose.
Do I bury my nose in this glass?
Please do not.
Do not. Okay.
All right. This isn't wine. You don't need to kind of bury your nose in there at 11, 12, 13%. Wine is a lot more subtle. At a 90 proof spirit, 45% ABV, you can burn out your taste buds.
Sure.
And burn out your nose that way.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is just waft this under your nose. Breathe in, breathe out. Take your time here. There's no rush. Whiskey will tell you what kind of flavors are in there. And there's no wrong answer to what you smell or taste. Everybody's going to have a different palate based on what you eat based on what you drink. But I firmly believe great palates are not born, they are trained.
Sure.
So take the time, pay attention to what you're eating and drinking and what flavors emerge.
Now, what are you getting on the nose here, Brian?
I mean, I start off with a big spice note with Bulleit bourbon, which isn't a surprise. We talked about the high rye recipe, 2/3 corn, 1/3 rye. That rye is going to present in this glass as baking spice. And I say this generally because I drink this whiskey all the time. Your mileage may vary. However, we talk about spiciness in whiskey. We don't mean chili peppers. We mean baking spice.
Sure.
Right? So think of clove, allspice, cinnamon, nutmeg. All of a sudden, you've got a more specific flavor profile that we're after. Of course, the next thing we're going to do is take a small sip.
Sure.
Now, take a small sip, pay attention to where it goes. We're going to take a longer sip for flavor.
Sure. And the first sip is really to acclimate, right? So we are putting, this is about 90 proof?
90 proof.
90 proof, so we're going to put something that's 90 proof on our palate, and it's going to be woken up really quickly, right?
That's it. Your brain is going to immediately go back to its memory banks and say, whiskey.
Yes.
Bourbon. And it'll get more specific as we go. So
Okay.
that's what we want to jumpstart.
Cheers, my friend. Cheers.
And push that all across the tongue. Now your brain knows you're drinking bourbon.
Right.
And now we're going to go back and pull all those other flavors out. So when we go back and smell this again, for me, more barrel character comes out.
Sure.
Generally, I smell the grain, I taste the oak, if that feels different.
Sure.
So you should be able to feel those on the center of your tongue, kind of a little bit of spiciness, dryness. Those are tannins. Those are the same compounds that are in big red wines.
Yeah.
Again, aged in oak barrels, that's where we're getting that spiciness from the barrel.
Okay.
A little bit of that caramel, a little bit of that vanilla as well are going to come out and present that way.
Gotcha. And I think the important thing to remember here too is that the experience is going to change every time you kind of take an initial sip, right? So your palate is now acclimated a little bit, so you're going to kind of get a little bit more deeper and in-depth profiles on the second sip. Does that sound about right?
That's exactly right. And every sip after is going to unlock a different range of flavor.
Yeah.
Now, feel free to add a little water, add an ice cube to your whiskey. I don't get paid enough to judge. I want you to enjoy your whiskey as you do. But when you sit with that whiskey a little bit, the flavors start to change. Your brain gets more specific about what you're smelling and what you're tasting. So what jumps out to you about that?
Yeah, for me, and I like, well, I like Bulleit specifically because of its high rye nature, right? So like for me, the traditional bourbons are a little too sweet. So when I'm catching this spice, clove I get, I do get hints of fruit and a little bit of vanilla. To me, it's a really nice balance of all of those things that you talk about, right? So the grain, the sweetness, and the barrel, to me, it's the perfect bourbon.
Well, so I'm not going to argue there.
Oh, okay.
Especially when you're making cocktails, which we're about to do. One of the things that really jumps out, and it's a very specific memory that I have, and I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what this thing is called. Do you remember an orange that's stuffed with cloves that sits on top of a lampshade?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Like in the holidays?
No idea what it's called.
I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
If anyone knows what it's called, please let me know. But you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sure.
That's the smell I get when I taste this whiskey.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
Okay.
There's a little bit of vanilla there too, but it's definitely holiday themed.
And most people are going to, kind of find that memory.
Yes.
Right? And so every smell, every taste is relatable to some kind of memory that you've experienced in your life. And so, for us in the industry, we always go back to what was that moment that correlates in your brain with a specific smell or specific taste. So, yeah. All right. Well, look, I think the important thing here is we're trying to give you a little bit of insight into, kind of what you'll experience when you come here to the Bulleit experience, and going through our multi-sensory tasting. You're going to get, go through the portfolio. So you're not only going to taste the bourbon, the rye, the 10-year, and the barrel strength, but this just gives you a little bit of insight into what we do. And Brian, thank you so much for walking us through that. I think it's something that hopefully everybody can use at home again and again and kind of take that. But we are here to make our second cocktail of the evening. Now this one is called the John Brown. This was a new cocktail to me. It is something that came from our friends at Liberty Hall, so thank you all for doing that. And I know there's a lot of different ingredients here, so why don't you walk through what we're going to put in, and we're going to build this in the shaker again, right? So this is going to be a shaken cocktail, so let's walk through the ingredients that are going to cocktail number 2.
Sure. So again, start of the show, still going to be our Bulleit bourbon. Cocktail ingredients we're going to go through. In your kit, you should have aromatic bitters. Now, bitters are considered really the salt and pepper of cocktails. They add a lot of spice. They add a lot of unique characteristic flavor. We've got our dehydrated lemons, which are going to be our garnish here. We've red currant syrup. Now, red currant is a pretty hard to obtain ingredient. Has a really distinctive flavor profile. It's a little sweet. It's kind of dry. There's a little bit of spice to it. It's definitely fruity, but it's not over the top. It's not like blackberry or like cranberry. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
Fresh lemon juice, easy enough.
Sure.
Lemons are bright, provide a nice level of acidity. Club soda is going to help kind of give that cocktail a little bit of effervescence. Ginger syrup provides a little bit of spice and again a touch of sweetness.
Okay.
So we should think that this isn't going to be over the top sweet. I want to balance the acidity. The lemon juice and the red currant syrup are going to be able to help us do that. And of course, the spice note in the bourbon is going to complement the spice in the ginger syrup. Bitters ties it all together.
Great.
So that's the idea here.
Seems there's a lot of complexity going on.
Well, this is going to be the most complex cocktail I'm going to make today.
Okay, perfect.
But,
I can't wait to try it.
So here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do, just like last time, add ice to our cocktail glass. Now, I'm going to start with our bitters. You always want to start with your least expensive ingredient and move forward.
Now, Brian, before you go on, when we talk about bitters, I know, here at the bar, we have a whole shelf of different types of bitters, right? So
Yes.
Here we're using aromatic bitters, but it seems like there's just an infinite choice of different bitters out in the marketplace, right?
Bitters, again, like salt and pepper, they are the simplest thing that can add the most complexity to your cocktail.
Okay.
So, our partners here at Hella have done a great job of formulating something that's really unique and bold and spicy, not like chili peppers, but very complex.
Sure.
Bitters are measured in dashes.
Right.
They are a rough estimation. So I like bitters. I think they're going to be great in this cocktail. So I did about a dash. if you want to do a dash and a half, 2 dashes, go for it. It's up to you to figure
Gotcha.
out exactly how bad you want these. We're going to add our red currant syrup. It's going to be a ½ ounce of this. So, ½ ounce. And again, you're going to see that each of these cocktail ingredients, there is more to make another one. We're going to add 1 ounce of lemon juice. This will be about half the bottle here. We get into ginger syrup. It's going to be a ½ ounce. Again, providing that spice. Now we have all of our ingredients, with the exception of our Bulleit bourbon and our club soda. So Bulleit bourbon is going to be next. We're not going to shake our club soda because we don't want that cocktail shaker to explode.
I was going to say, please no.
Yeah, right? But we are going to add our 1.5 ounces of Bulleit bourbon. Now, a pro tip here. We can add that club soda to the very top of this cocktail. But if we really want to make sure all of these ingredients are fully blended together, we're going to do what we call a club soda bottom. So we put a little bit of splash of that at the bottom of the glass. That way we add our cocktail after we're done shaking it.
It'll come all the way through the cocktail.
It'll come all the way through and
Gotcha.
provide our texture evenly.
Great
Now,
tip. And we
go
go
ahead
back
and
to
tap
the
everything in.
making sure you don't throw it at me.
Well, I'm
Rule
not going to
number
throw
one.
the cocktail at Tom. Aim right here.
We get rule number 1.
And again, we want to shake harder and faster than we think we need to. So here we go.
Perfect.
Now there are a lot of ingredients here. So shake harder. And now we should have a nice frothy texture. That club soda integrates really well because it's already in the glass. Now we add our lemon wheel.
Easy for you.
Yeah, right. And there we have
The John Brown.
the John Brown.
All right, can I try this one?
Please.
Excellent. Cheers, everyone. Brian, thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
Wow, that's delicious.
I'm glad to hear it.
I love, like, right off the top, you get the spiciness from the ginger syrup. It's amazing. I think the club soda really kind of lengthens the drink. Fantastic. And I think this would be a great cocktail to have a brunch cocktail or during the day. So, again, as we're going back to Derby time, this seems like a great cocktail to have. So, Brian, I appreciate your wisdom and your knowledge. You've given us 2 great cocktails to try. You've walked us through a tasting, how to taste whiskey. Hopefully everyone at home, again, take those things. We're here really as, to educate, right? And we want you to be able to use these things at home and use this knowledge that you've got today. So, Brian, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Janie, we're going to send it back to you at Liberty Hall. And thank you all for joining us this evening. We appreciate it a lot. Take care.
Thank you so much for coming to our party tonight. I hope you've had as much fun attending as we've had putting it on. Special thanks again to our honorary chairs, Tom and Betsy, to Tom, who is on site at Bulleit, to our photographers, to our staff again, and to our sponsors, and again, all of our friends. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for all you do for our site.